Welcome to ENside Politics, our weekly podcast on three big things and four medium-sized things you need to know about San Antonio politics. I'm Greg Jefferson, politics editor of the San Antonio Express News, and I'm joined today by City Hall reporter Megan Rodriguez.
Hello.
And our special guest, District 1 Councilwoman Sukh Kaur. Welcome. How's it going?
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so you're 6 months into your second term. How's it going?
It is busy. We have had, some might say a little bit of a rocky 6 months to the start. But we've been really just trying to build our team, and when it's like, and I think I use so many sports analogies, but I think it's like any sports team. When you bring on new team members, it takes a while to start gelling. I mean, the Spurs figured it out, so I'm sure we can too.
Speaking of the Spurs, so that was a big thing, right? You had a framework document, the term sheet for a Spurs arena that the city council voted on in late summer. Was it August or September?
August
yeah.
21st. I feel like that day
it's like burned into your brain. And that in itself was quite a big deal. It kind of split the council with the mayor falling on one side against. She wanted to slow down the whole process. You were on the other side. Why was it? I mean, what did you feel like the best argument for you was?
I was actually talking to someone yesterday who is who I would consider just a constituent that is engaged and wanted to better understand. Mm-hmm. And for me, it came down to truly building a space where around the Spurs Stadium, there was things for folks to do, folks to continue, like people that go to games to be able to continue to stay and watch and enjoy all the small businesses, go have food, and really revitalize downtown. I think spending, and I totally understand the concerns regarding pulling them from the east side and the east side development that did not occur. And that's why I think we have to double down on what we're doing over there. But to me, it was really important to make sure we have a thriving downtown and keep our number one sports team, our only sports team really for Major League.
So look ahead a little bit. It seems like this year, so far, City Council has been focused on we'll say other things, not necessarily the Spurs. Is a downtown arena just not going to be the big deal this year? It has been
in 2026.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be done, right? When we voted on it, the term sheet in August, we knew that we're still talking 3-4 years out. I mean, we still have to do a feasibility study. What is it going to take for our officers to be able to work overtime? Does that mean we need additional support or help? What does the traffic look like? That's my neighborhoods will not let me forget. We have to figure out the traffic plan, the parking plan. How do we make sure that we're not parking in people's driveways? Because that's the thing I hear a lot from my downtown residents.
Right.
And then we also have to make sure we have enough housing, right? That is the biggest thing that at least I really want to focus on in the next few years, is making sure we have a solid affordable housing plan for the area. So it's not just market rate housing that gets built.
Now, so far this year, City Council, some of your attention, a good deal of it, has been taken up by something completely out of your hands, which is ICE's crackdown on illegal immigration, particularly in Minneapolis. We've seen protests breaking out across the country and in San Antonio. Now, the San Antonio Business Journal reported last week that ICE appears to be in talks with an industrial property owner on the east side to buy I believe it was a 640,000 square foot warehouse on Southeast Loop 410. I need to say the Express News is trying to independently verify this, but already public officials are reacting to it. That would be County Commissioner Tommy Calvert. He said he would fight any effort to open an ICE detention facility on the east side. Jayla McKee Rodriguez has also come out against this possibility. Where do you stand on it?
I mean, I am absolutely going to support my council colleague who represents that part of town. You said ICE's crackdown on illegal immigration, and I don't think that's what they're doing. They're just killing a protester who's a nurse at an ICU, an ICU nurse. That's not a crackdown on illegal immigration. That's just a pure sign of authoritarianism. Like it is a terrible thing that is going on. And I am so thankful to Representative Castro for getting out Liam, his
5-year-old,
5-year-old that was detained.
Ramos, right, and his father.
Yeah.
So they were picked up. Picked up in Minneapolis, taken to the detention facility in Dilley, and they were released, I believe, yesterday.
Yeah, and just anywho.
So if ICE is actually, if our reporting bears out that they're in talks to buy this warehouse and it closes, it would be federal property, which means the city has really no say over zoning, what they could do with that property. Is there any way to stop it? Or is it just, does city council, if you oppose it, you've really got the bully pulpit and kind of that's it?
Yeah. And Councilmember McKee Rodriguez was working on a memo to try to gain some support. And I know he would have that support. He did a video on it just yesterday. And, just to go back to Liam, I'm going to shout him out again. Joaquin wrote a note for Liam, basically to say, hey, this is trauma that you got inflicted upon you, but I hope you don't remember our country by the detention center. I hope you remember it by the hundreds of thousands of people that were fighting for your release. And those people matter. That voice matters. And I feel we could do the same in this situation. We have a strong community that is out there every day making sure their voices are heard. And I think we could continue to protest and make sure that.
So a lot of protests, but it could still go forward.
At this point, that's what we think.
Yeah. So on, I think it's also important to say that it's not only ICE is not only looking in San Antonio. The Washington Post in December reported that they're looking for large industrial properties across the country in Virginia, I believe Arizona, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. Because they have so many detainees and they're looking for these mega warehouses to house them in. So that's kind of the background. Now on January 26th, the city council got a briefing from city staff on really what is, just as simply as possible, like what is the city's involvement with ICE, that the city being the San Antonio Police Department. And what happened was pretty remarkable. 180 people signed up to speak. It took 5 hours to get to kind of
late into the
evening to get to the discussion. But I think the overwhelming majority of speakers wanted the city to have nothing to do with ICE. Right now, You are chair of City Council's Public Safety Committee. You probably have feelings about that. You did have 3 City Council members, Edward Munguia, Terry Castillo, and Jayla McKee Rodriguez, say, yeah, the city should have nothing to do with ICE, that this is a law enforcement agency that's out of control, and this SAPD shouldn't have any dealings with them. But you also have the fact of Texas Senate Bill 4, which was passed in 2017, which requires cities to cooperate with ICE. What's your stance on it?
Yeah,
on San Antonio SAPD's involvement with ICE.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked by the slide that showed that there was only 2 incidences in 2025 that ICE actually asked for SAPD support. Obviously, the raid that happened in District 1, that SAPD was there, but it was because they didn't consider that because they didn't start off as a nice raid. So that being said, I think what I really want to focus on is what we can do locally. Because, yeah, sure, there is a requirement by the state and we have to follow state law. Right. But at the same time, I think there's a lot more that we can do. Some of my colleagues, I think it was Councilmember Munguia that brought up a fund of a sort, and I'd like to create an immigrant rights fund for folks that were detained wrongfully and need help with the attorney. We had one of the attorneys come out and speak. we did that for the Reproductive Justice Fund. And so I believe that we can do something like that in this upcoming budget cycle where we allocate funding for them. I think every city staff should have the Know Your Rights training and trying to make sure and advocate. So I think we should be doing everything we can locally.
Is all this at the talk stage, or has anything actually happened?
No. So after that, these are some of the things that had come out of that conversation, including that dashboard, so we could at least track, even if it's just from folks in the community telling us, because a large part of the problem is they're not giving us data. And we don't even know what's real. Like I've heard from some folks that they're arresting the same person 3 times every time they go to court and counting that as 3 arrests. And because the administration is asking for lofty numbers. And so all of that to say, I think we need to figure out a way to create transparency, accountability. But to your point, the conversation started a couple weeks ago, and we're going to keep pushing on it.
What does the timeline kind of look like for implementing any of those? I know it's early stages, but when are you all trying to roll some of this out?
Well, we're going to try to agendize in public safety some of these ideas and ask city staff to bring them back for the March meeting. So the February meeting, the agenda's already basically set. If we can, we'll try to change things around, but we're going to try to bring something back at the March public safety meeting.
And I also want to add a little bit of context here, because we're kind of talking about like police involvement with ICE, and to kind of give a little bit more
what they
detail about what they do. So Senate Bill 4 essentially just requires that local law enforcement comply with federal immigration officials when they want to hold inmates who could potentially be subject to deportation beyond their release date. That way that they can come and take them into custody. That's one big part of their kind of collaboration there. But they also do things like providing perimeter support when there are raids sometimes, which I think those are the two, correct me if I'm wrong, I think those are the 2 instances that you were referring to was when SAPD was kind of called in. And also, it allows but doesn't require that police officers and sheriff's deputies can basically question people about their immigration status. But that's something that SAPD says that if it's not relevant to the reason that they are pulling someone over, that is not something that they're asking about. So I just wanted to kind of provide that additional context.
So, and that's, you don't really object to that. What she just described, the kind of what's required by SB4. You're not calling for SAPD to set that aside. I
just don't know that it is possible.
Right.
I mean, I could say, of course, I would love to say,
right.
I'd love to say, yeah, SAPD is going to say no.
Yeah.
It's required by state. Unfortunately, we have to follow our state's laws.
Right.
And so I of course, object to it. I don't want them to, but I don't know that we can actually say no.
So you feel like your hands are tied.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, kind of moving on a little bit, related. So Police Chief William McManus, after nearly 20 years on the job, he took a 1-year vacation at CPS Energy to do
vacation.
Well, I mean, it couldn't have been that hard. And I think he probably got fairly well compensated. Anyway, so but he did come back to the city of San Antonio as police chief. He's leaving now. He's retiring by September. In kind of broad strokes, tell me how he did in his time over San Antonio's police force.
I mean, I don't think there's a more tenured police chief in.
Yeah, it's a rarity. Yeah, I mean, those are talk about hot seats.
Yeah, and usually they're
they don't last
5-year
long.
positions.
Yeah, they do not last. They're like city managers.
Decades. Yeah,
kind of they're not around for much longer than 5 years.
Yeah.
So the fact that he had staying power, I don't know. Must mean either we have a lot of inertia or he was doing a good job.
Yeah.
Did he do a good job?
Yeah, absolutely. He served our community so well. There's one thing that I saw that I was like, wow, this is pretty surprising. But we looked at all of our cases for CARB, which is the Community Action Review Board that the police officers have in the event that there is a violation of some sort or an offense that occurs for an officer. And Chief McManus holds a very high standard for his officers. There would be recommendations that the CARB would present for him on disciplinary action, and he would take one stronger. So, I mean, I think he held and we, of course, I was an educator and we always know, right? There's you can't detail a whole or describe a whole force by a couple of folks that aren't taking the right action. Like I will never forget the incident that happened outside that Whataburger for the kid. But so there are instances that happen, but I do think he holds folks accountable. I mean, I think he did the right action for those officers that took an action against the mental health case. So, you know, I think he did a great job for our community. He served our community well.
Now you've got in terms of law enforcement, you've got a really complicated district. So your district, District 1, takes in big chunk of downtown. So we've got a lot of hotels and restaurants that kind of live and die by the visitor trade. And you'll recall about a year ago, there were spate of violent incidents in the downtown area. And a lot of hospitality industry participants said, we need more cops here. And Police Chief McManus said, whoa. It's not, these have caught the media's attention, but on balance, our downtown is safe. Eventually, I think the number, he did kind of increase the numbers. Were you in touch with him in that period? What was he like working with? I mean, I assume you were concerned.
He was looking at the overall crime rate.
Right. Did you agree with his approach or
no?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that the approach, but it was the way that he was saying it to these business owners who were really being affected. I was actually we were talking before we started, but I met him for a lot because I teach yoga, and one of the spots right next to the place I teach yoga had a bullet that went through, a gunshot that went through their window, and it like literally went through the business, and all of the workers there were so scared. I mean, it shattered the window, and they didn't know where it came from. They couldn't see what was happening, and it was because the chase was going down Cesar Chavez. And so, I understand from if you're a small business owner and all of a sudden that's happening, it makes it really hard to do what you're trying to do, which is create a space for the community. So all that to be said, I think I feel like the community felt it was dismissive of what they were experiencing. And he was looking at the overall rates, like the overall rates across the city. And I think we just need to.
Did he ever, refresh my memory, did he ever reach an accommodation with you and downtown business owners or no?
I'm not sure.
Really? Okay. And how about other parts of your district? I mean, you've got neighborhoods in and around downtown and kind of reaching up to the north side. So District 1 always strikes me as this kind of 50-50 district. You've got some very low income neighborhoods and some very kind of posh neighborhoods. 100%. And I would imagine their like crime concerns are vastly different. Like what's the gamut in your district?
You know, what I always say is that the person that represents District 1 has to represent the whole city, because we have all of the big issues that the city faces at large, right? The economic segregation that you see when you drive down Hildebrand is real. It's one of the worst statistics I hate that we have in the city, is that we have the highest economic segregation. And so all that being said, one of the things that a lot of my community members face is really how do we help support the unhoused folks, right? Because that's one of the issues where they feel like is really hard. We have Old Spanish Trails in my district, which they have a soccer program, and there is an encampment right behind it, and the kids feel unsafe, and people will be showering, et cetera, while the kids are playing soccer. And so I think that's one of the things that a lot of our neighborhoods get. Our stray and loose dog population is another that is really, really severe on the west part of my district. And we've gotten a better at it, I would say, since we've doubled down on investment into ACS, but there's a lot more work that we still have to do. And so, our safe officers are doing a great job. There's obviously always things like even just the whole porch pirates, because folks.
Your Amazon delivery is good. Yes, nice.
So that comes up a lot in communities, and then a lot of fire issues too with old structures, right? We have a lot of old vacant structures that get boarded up by code, but they're concerning because they can be a fire hazard and a safety issue for residents.
Right.
I'm curious, though, kind of as we're looking at this search for a new police chief, McManus will be leaving in September, so there's kind of a bit of runway here. Where is the city right now in that search, and what is City Council's potential role in this?
They haven't developed the city manager's office hasn't fully developed that plan. I asked for what the plan would look like. I'm sure they will do a national search. I do think he's done a great job of building up succession and leadership in SAPD.
So it could be somebody internally.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of things we need to look at, and I would hope the city council at least gets some role. And obviously we'll work closely with Eric, but it is his
right. But I mean, you're also the city manager's manager. Like you oversee him. So I would imagine at some point you'll weigh in and kind of. But I mean, do you think city council can come together? I mean, in like if is city council as it is today capable of coming up with a profile of what you would consider the ideal police chief?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. The majority of us are very aligned on values. One of the things because on Saturday when we spoke, I was with the LGBTQ+A community. We had a meeting to talk about what we were going to do next for North Main Avenue and some of the concerns they had. And one of the things that came up is they definitely want to continue building a relationship with SAPD. SAPD has been great to our gay community, but they still we asked them to develop a video, like an educational video, so that folks that are going on dates from dating apps have safety, know what's safe, know where to go. We don't want to see incidences of the community being targeted, and with everything going on right now, there is hatred out there. So we're working with them to push them to continue to do that and even create that video because they haven't already. But we want them to do more for our community as well. Now,
if you had the power all on your own to go out and pick a police chief, tell me about that police chief. How would they conduct themselves? How would they change things at SAPD from the status quo today?
So for me, the one thing that I have noticed that I would like to see more of is an understanding of why crime is occurring and trying to address those. We've done a good job working with UTSA to do our, three-part and three-phased approach for addressing violent crime. But to me, it's important that public safety be looked as holistic, and that we spend a lot more time during our public safety committee meetings, during even working with the community, talking about root causes and how do we address those, and making sure that we're doing a both and approach of hearing, to your point earlier, right? Hearing what our businesses, what the community members are saying that's affecting them, but then also thinking about how do we create long-term solutions for our unhoused. I think that needs to be a conversation that the chief next chief is very much engaged in.
Now, tell me how you see that kind of working. A police department getting at the root causes of crime. Is that really something in the purview of an SAPD? Or is this another office outside of SAPD? I
think it should be within SAPD, right? I think we should be doing more analysis rather than just looking at this last month we changed the format in which we did the statistical reviews because it was they just would read the numbers. But numbers are just numbers if they don't have any meaning behind them, right? So we did a data dive into property crime and jewelry theft, actually, because I had a constituent who called me.
Jewelry theft, that's interesting.
Because it was very prevalent in some homes. And they were going and selling this very rare jewelry in the shops where you resell back. And so people were stealing and then taking them. And she felt like SAPD didn't do enough to at least help her, walk her through the process. So you've been robbed, now what? We don't really have that. So I think there's a lot of areas that we can look at. That's not necessarily a root cause, but it is an experience that someone had as they were working through SAPD that I think we could do more with.
Okay.
So I really like taking a deep dive into the department and seeing where there are areas and rooms for growth and trying to not only be at the conversation when we're talking about permanent supportive housing. Right.
Now, I'm gonna switch gears dramatically.
Okay.
Here. So we got a tip Saturday morning, the Express News that the city of San Antonio was planning to shut down the Bonham Exchange at 2 a.m. Sunday. Shutting down, in this case, meaning that they yank the nightclub's certificate of occupancy, which every business in San Antonio needs to operate. This was a new one on us. we had not seen this coming. It wound up to, they got a 5-day reprieve, but and Megan did great work Saturday breaking the story, and as she kind of went through all of her reporting, it became clear that this wasn't just something that erupted Saturday. This has been a slow burn for a long time. So why don't you kind of walk us through the problem? We know that this goes back to a 2018 city ordinance requiring nightclubs to install fire sprinkler systems. The Bonham Exchange was one of 7 nightclubs still out of compliance.
The others were Industry Nightclub, Heat Nightclub, Nuevo Volcan, Club 727, I-10 Ice House Exchange, and the Paper Tiger as well. But all of those except Bonham Exchange now have agreements with the city basically to kind of reduce capacity, have fire watch, different things to basically appease them as they continue to work toward getting their sprinklers in.
So you tell me, when did this come to your attention? How did things kind of unfold?
Yeah. So we've been working on this for a while.
How long?
So since I first got elected in
2023,
it was with the previous management at the Bonham. And so they reached out, and so management flipped over at the Bonham last March. But previous management had asked for an extension of the sprinklers ordinance. And so we worked with them to get that. And then we didn't really hear much from them, in 2024. So we thought they were good and they were working on a plan and executing. In beginning of 2025, or last summer, really, Joan, who is the current manager, reached out. And because Bonham is run by a nonprofit. It's owned by a nonprofit. So they have a corporation, but it's owned by the nonprofit that has a board of directors. And Joan's the managing director right now. And she reached out and said, hey, we got this citation from DSD and from the fire marshal's office saying we're out of compliance for these sprinklers. And the key part about this is the 300 occupancy. Most of the other bars didn't have occupancy that was much higher. The Bonham's occupancy, which is up for argument, is 1,106.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it was 600.
Yeah, I will say that's been kind of this, talking with the attorneys that I kind of represent them. Has been this kind of
even
debate.
That is a dispute.
Basically, the way the attorneys have said was that the certificate that the city was threatening to revoke was around 650, but the Bonham had another on file that I know we talked about that was around 1,100. And so there's this debate over how many were they even allowed to have in the first place.
It's probably important to say that in addition to being like a real landmark in the LGBTQ community, the Bonham is huge. It's a big property, 3 stories.
Big property. And they don't even, so they got a consultant that's been helping them. And he said they could have 500 alone in their second floor ballroom if you take 1 person per square foot, which is the allowable rule. And based on the number of ingresses and egresses you have. And so even the fact that they had a debated certificate of occupancy number, DSD couldn't find how they got that, but they have a printed certificate that says 1,106. So someone at DSD gave them 1,106. So regardless, so we were working with them to try to help them get time. And so I would go to city staff and explain the situation and say, hey, this is a historic building, 45 years old, and they need help. And so they just need a little bit of time to get their sprinklers done. And Joan had gotten a couple of quotes already. They ranged from $500,000 to $1.5 million. And she needed time to be able to raise the funds and then execute. But she knew she needed to do it. And she even hired a fire consultant to help her. So I went to city staff and asked them for time. She thought, they were good to go, but then they came back several weeks later and ticketed her again. So she was confused because she said, hey, I spoke with a councilwoman. We were under the impression that this is going to, we were going to get time, but then they kept ticketing her. And so in the back and forth of the citations, I went to city staff and I said, we have to stop. Let's create a compliance agreement. Well, it took them 3 months to get her a letter and a compliance agreement, because every time the attorneys would meet with her, they were still requiring them in the compliance agreement to knock their occupancy down to less than 300. Right. And if she could live off of less than 300, she wouldn't need sprinklers in the first place, right?
So in other words, like at 300 or less, there's not enough revenue, not enough cash flow to actually pay for sprinklers.
Exactly. She said their CPS bill a month is $2,500. Like, it's a big building, right? So, and you know, some have argued, well, when we go there, we don't see over 300 people, and that's true. It's not every night, like not every Thursday the Bonham is popping, but the days where everyone is there is what's keeping them alive through the month, right? And so, if you force them to cut that occupancy on the day that they're busy, then they won't be able to pay for all of their costs and help raise and put some monies to the side for sprinklers. They have a plan. They have folks in the community that are willing to help them fundraise, and they just need the time to be able to do so. And so this vote on Thursday actually was Councilmember McKee Rodriguez. I went back and forth with city staff for so long. Right. The Councilmember McKee Rodriguez in December said if they call again saying that they're not getting what they need, we got to vote on this.
So what you're talking about is a resolution basically giving not only the Bonham Exchange, but these 6 other nightclubs an additional year. This would be through February 1st, 2027. Is that correct?
And so we're going to change the language of the resolution basically to say, figure out a compliance agreement that would give them enough time that they need and the occupancy that they need.
Right. So so we were told by the Bonham Exchange, the general manager and 2 of its attorneys, that city staff had said, look, we're going to pull your certificate of occupancy Sunday at 2:15 a.m. Did you feel like that was like, were they trying to get in under the wire before council could take up a resolution? In other words, shut it down before and make the resolution moot, or was there something else going on?
No, I don't. I think it was unintentional. They put that in the letter, and then they knew they were trying to get them to sign. That was their goal, is that it didn't have to go to city vote. So they were trying to get them to sign, and then
compliance agreement.
To the compliance agreement.
And so, but the city staff had never at no point budged on the 300 number.
Right.
Okay. Now, I mean, you're chair of the Public Safety Committee. I mean, it seems like having nightclubs with fire suppression systems, it's a good idea. Right?
This was actually something that came forward because of past fires.
Right, yeah. I mean,
in other places.
A Rhode Island nightclub in 2000, 2001 killed 100 people. So there's a good argument for it. How do you... why not lean on these nightclubs to do the safe thing for their patrons? And
they are absolutely doing that. They are working towards that, right? That is what we want. We all want the same thing, that all of ours, particularly, and I mentioned this in the article, that I understand I'm the chair of public safety, and I would never want to put particularly our LGBTQ plus community at risk. And at the same time, in 45 years of operation, they've had 2 incidences that they can. I've asked for this data, but it's been a little bit hard to get. But 2 incidences. One, it was a paper that caught on fire. They suppressed it before the fire department came. 2 was a plug that was in and caused a spark. No structural damage ever. In 45 years. And the one thing that's really important to note with this specifically is for 1,000 people occupancy, they say that you need a 4 exit solution. That's what's required by code. They have 10. And so if you think about it, again, these fires occurred because people jam up and they can't get out of the building, right? When you have 10 exit options, that gives a lot of folks, in the event that something disastrous happens, exit options. And the fire consultant they hired did say, we should light up the emergency exit signs better, make sure there's enough signage to point people out. But I'll go back to my initial comment, is public safety is about holistic community safety, and that place provides a safe space for a lot of our community members. So I would argue shutting it down is also a threat to public safety and
It's something else also that the general manager, Joan Duckworth, had kind of mentioned was that for more than a year now, they've hired, basically had some of like an employee that gets certified and goes around kind of watching, for anything that could potentially spark a fire. And so that's been kind of something that is also written in, I think, to some of the other compliance agreements. Like it's something that the city has kind of advocated for when you don't already have your sprinklers in place. And they don't contest any of that. It's really the occupancy limits that they are kind of pushing back upon. And I guess I'm curious though, because I think for a lot of people hearing that the rule changed in 2018 and here we are in 2026, like why has this not kind of happened already?
8 years. It's a long time.
I guess, I know we've been talking a lot about the Bonham Exchange, but my understanding is you've also talked to some of the other businesses as well. Can you tell us a little bit about like who else you've talked with and just what the main reasons for the delay has been?
Yeah, I think for the bars change ownership pretty quickly too. And so even I was at the Heat on Sunday and they changed ownerships last year at the end of 2024 too. So a lot of these places have shifted. I think for the ones that didn't, honestly, COVID hit and everybody went into pause mode, and coming out of COVID, they just it took them a long time to actually, I don't even know if they knew what the actual updated deadline date was. And then it's, as a small business owner, you just kind of move on and think, okay, this is something I'll get to. And then started getting citations over and over again. And that's what triggered them to say like, okay. And so I personally think we could have done a better job as a city to sit down with the ownership and say, let's go over your plans. Let's figure out how much this is going to cost and create what we're doing right now, these compliance agreements with them in 2023. But we didn't do that. We basically sent them a letter and then started ticketing them last year. And I think we should have been better about supporting our small businesses to make sure. And like, Heat, that was one of the ones that just signed a compliance agreement. They told me yesterday that after getting $18,000 of violations last year, they had initially submitted plans to DSD and they had shown everything that was at their building. They said, you need sprinklers. So they went and spent a ton of money to design them. They resubmitted their plans at the end of last year and they say, oh, you actually have a firewall. You never needed them in the first place. You just need to replace your doors. And so I'm going to share that story on Thursday. Like he told me he spent $75,000 trying to comply with this ordinance. And y'all know these clubs aren't charging like very high prices. They're not charging, pearl prices for drinks. It's not $20 a drink. Right. So
I kind of to that point, I remember us talking on Saturday a bit about kind of your frustration with the city's approach to all of this. And I know you've hit some of those points there. Can you kind of elaborate, though, on what your communications had been with the city, with the business owners, just kind of what those frustrations that you have are? I've
just been trying to say that our job should not be to shut these businesses down. Right. Our job is to bring them into compliance. And the city attorney's office would agree with that. But we didn't sit down with them side by side and actually figure out, like, look and say, this is what you need to do, right? We didn't even, our DSD director hasn't even gone out to see the Bonham. Right. And even though the manager has asked. So, and I'm a very collaborative person. I always want to work really closely with city. And that's why for so many months I kept saying, it's our job to help businesses in our community, not to shut them down.
Now on Saturday, you said the city's response, its dealings with these nightclubs, it was kind of marked by misinformation and disorganization. I think you've covered the disorganization pretty well. How about misinformation? How did the city misinform these nightclubs?
Well, most of it was just, what is the actual deadline for them to comply? I think that was they didn't know what, and they had a deadline, but it was confusing when they would give them a variance. There's already misinformation. I just gave you two examples of clubs that got misinformation. And so I think we could have done this a little better.
So you see this as coincidental that you had this resolution going on the agenda for this Thursday's meeting, and then suddenly you have the city prepared to pull the certificate of occupancy. You don't think there's any relationship between the two?
So we were in December, had this conversation about whether or not we needed to go to council to ask for this extension because they were trying to essentially just work on the timeline. And when they came back in January, they had set this deadline of January 31st for the compliance agreement. So they had sent a letter saying you have until January 31st. And that when we came back, when they had that meeting with the attorneys, they came back and said, look, they won't budge on the occupancy and it's not going to work for us. So that's when we submitted the 3-signature memo. So they had this deadline set and then we submitted the 3-signature memo, but they were waiting to agendize the item to see if they would sign the compliance.
So it was really about the deadline. The fact that, you had January 31st ending on Saturday.
Yeah.
And got it. Now, so you'd mentioned Councilman Mickey Rodriguez. Who else is supporting this resolution?
Well, Councilwoman Castillo signed on with us, and so she was a part of the 3-signature memo. I have had conversations with a lot of my colleagues. They share some of the similar concerns that I do. Why are we voting on this on council? This seems like an administrative issue that the city should be handling. There's some concern about liability, and then there is some concern that didn't go through the right committee process, but we didn't have time to do that because January 31st was their deadline. And so we needed to get it on the agenda. Okay.
Now, the compliance agreements that these other 6 nightclubs entered into and signed, like how involved were you in that or at all? Were you just kind of hands off?
They don't engage with us. The attorney's office does the compliance agreements on their own. I asked for copies of them, but I haven't received them yet.
Okay. Now, if the resolution passes on Thursday, and by the way, do you foresee any opposition?
I do foresee some opposition.
Okay. How much? And from whom? Mostly from whom, and then we can talk about how much.
The mayor has expressed concerns about it.
What are her concerns? That we're unaware, so it's all new to us.
I don't want to speak on her behalf, but she was concerned about the fact that they are not complying with the code and that it is a public safety issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, what do you do if a year from now it's a repeat and you've got any one of these nightclubs saying, oh, we can't do it. We need more time. Is there more time?
We are very clear. I think this is it. We're making a very hard line in the sand, which we have not done before. And the compliance agreements have metrics, and I think Bonham's should as well.
Right.
So we're going to work really closely with the Bonham. They have a really great fundraising plan. We were talking about it this Saturday. So I think there's Lindsay Andrews has this idea to do heated rivalry nights. There'll be a lot of fun stuff. We're going to make it. We're going to make it work.
Okay, great.
I guess I wanted to know, though, obviously you've been working with the Bonham for quite a while on this, but there's kind of this other issue also in District 1 regarding the kind of removal of rainbow crosswalks on North Main Avenue that came down as a result of kind of requirements from the state. And it was subsequently followed with the city painting rainbow sidewalks, which
look really cool.
Yeah, they're really on the way. I was driving past it this morning. It looks like it's a little more than halfway through. From talking to the city, it sounds like it'll be wrapped up by the end of this week. I guess I'm curious, though, was kind of that issue, that fight, part of your reason for wanting to kind of advocate harder for Bonham Exchange, which is an iconic gay club in the community? I didn't know if that was part of it, is just as we're seeing kind of things ripped away from the Pride District here, let's advocate for this particular business.
Absolutely. I mean, gay and trans rights are under attack in this state. We know that. And so I think it's important that we do everything we can locally. You might have control over our asphalt at the state, but you don't have control over our businesses and our historic institutions. This is a city issue. And so we should definitely be doing everything we can to support our businesses and institutions, which is why we were there on Saturday. We talked about more public safety in the area. They had a great idea to create and revamp Crockett Park into Pride Park and allow for better public space gathering opportunities there. There was other ideas about we're going to try to do an RFP for artists to come out and present ideas, whether it's sculpture, murals, whatever they want to do, so that we can provide more funding in that area for art. So, we need to double down where we have full control. And so obviously this conversation has been going on since before then, because it is a historic institution. Because yes, it is a gay institution, but also it's a small business and a historic institution.
I'm curious, just to make sure I'm clear, who exactly were you meeting with this weekend? That you've referred to it a couple of times,
Sorry.
but I know there's like Pride San Antonio, there's a new group called Pride 210, there's the LGBTQ plus advisory board. Is it kind of a mix of these different groups?
It was everyone.
Or?
We hosted the meeting. We just called it the Cultural Heritage Community Meeting and Cultural Heritage District Community Meeting, and it was everyone. We invited whoever wanted to come. Judge Rosie was there, and we just all brainstormed ideas, talked about challenges folks were facing and what we could do to move forward.
All right. You've given us a lot of your time this morning. I thank you very much, and we're going to let you go now. But thank you very much.
Keep to our 30 minutes.
Do we ever? No. No, we blew way past that. All right. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We will be back next week. If you've not signed up for the newsletter, I'm not even going to tell you how to do it because I've been on about this for 2 years now. So if you haven't done it now, you're never going to. Thanks a lot, and we will see you next week.